Today we're going to make 4 kinds of fancy headpins. Hey there, welcome. I'm Amrita from Artria Jewelry. I have a video up on my channel with the first 4 kinds, and here are 4 more. So the first one is, surprise, surprise, the snake headpin. This is a very fun pattern, and you can use this again to make a fancy pair of earrings if you want to just slide on a bead and have this as the base. That's really neat. You can also make an entire necklace with these as charms hanging out. And then I have the leaf shaped headpin. And then this is a 3-leaf clover or a club headpin. This I tend to use quite a bit. It's a great finisher for jewelry. You can also use the same technique to make a hook and eye closure for your necklaces and bracelets. So this is a pattern that I use quite often. And then this is a triangular headpin. And this is very easy to do as well. Tools you will need: a ruler, a flush cutter, a bent nose or chain nose pliers, needle nose or chain nose pliers, so you need 2 pairs of pliers, and then a round nose or a 6-step bail making plier. I like the 6-step looping pliers because then my loops are more consistent. So this is what I'm going to be using today. The materials you will need today is a spool of 20 gauge copper wire. The first headpin we're going to make is the snake headpin, and to make that you are going to need to cut 4 inches of your copper wire. So I'm going to flush cut the end, the wire on my spool, and measure out 4 inches, and then cut that as well. So that's my piece of wire. And then I'm going to use my 6-step looping pliers and just at the tip, so I'm going to hold the wire at the tip, just make my first bend. So this is kind of the tail right here for the snake. And then I'm going to make my first loop. And with the first loop, I like to adjust that to make it a little closer. And so you'll see it's a tighter loop right here. So I use my pliers to just pinch that close and then straighten the tail. So there, kind of has that tail right there. And you can adjust that if you want a longer tail or a shorter one. So once I have that initial bend, I'm going to take my second step of my looping pliers and go around that to make that first loop. So that's the first big loop. And then I'm going to hold the wire again with my second step and then turn this, the snake that I started, halfway across and then fold the wire the other half. So this way I'm lining up where the tail is kind of centered throughout the loops. And then again, slip the first step in, and then you can hold that and make another loop around it. So you start to see the snake forming. There. And so at this step, if you choose to stop, you can. I'm going to make one more loop and then switch up. So I'm going to hold the wire towards the end and then again turn the snake a little bit and then fold the wire a little bit as well. Okay, and you can just with your fingers push the loops together. Now once I get to this, I want to get this wire up. So I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, hold that close to the center, and then bend this wire up. Okay, and then use my pliers to bring that loop down again. So you can squeeze that and then hold it in place and straighten that wire. So there, I have my snake headpin. For the second headpin, we are going to make the leaf style headpin. And for that, you're going to need 4 inches of your 20 gauge copper wire. Again, start with flush cutting the tip, measure out my 4 inches. And then I'm going to use my first step on my looping pliers, but you could also use your round nose pliers. And I'm going to make my first P-loop. And you can just get it to touch. So that's the first P-loop. And then I'm going to continue to turn that a little bit. And then I'm going to switch to my needle nose or flat nose pliers and continue to swirl till I get the start of the wire up against the rest of it. So I basically have 2 full loops. And then I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. You can use your other pliers as well, or even the round nose. And then I'm going to make a fold in the wire so that I get this leaf shape right here. And you could just squeeze that together if you want kind of a sharper leaf, or you could leave it as is. And then we will continue to finish that loop till it comes to the top of the headpin. And then, like with everything else, I'm going to hold that and straighten it out so that I center the pin on the design. And so there we have the next one, which is the leaf headpin. These are really quick and easy, aren't they? So if you find yourself without a headpin and you want to make a quick pair of earrings, this is a great way to do it. Our third type of headpin is this triangular shaped headpin. And again, for this one, we're going to cut out 4 inches of copper wire, 20 gauge. So that's 4 inches right here. And then I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. With the tip of my needle nose pliers, I'm just going to make one bend, move my plier to the folded section of the wire and make a second bend. So it kind of forms a triangle instead of a loop. Then I'm going to hold my pliers right up against that triangle and fold the wire till it touches the triangular loop. Then move my pliers again between where my triangle touches the length of the wire and again touch it over to the end. So we keep rotating the wire in that fashion to make a triangle. So this is the same technique you would use to make a round swirl or a coil, but I'm doing it with a triangle straight end of the wire. At this point, depending on what size of a triangle you want, I usually choose to do it when the wires become parallel to each other, is where I pick my center and fold that wire up. And so there I have my triangle headpin. For this last kind of headpin, we're going to make this 3-leaf clover or a club headpin. You're going to need your 20 gauge copper wire, and I'm going to cut 3.25 inches, so 3 1/4. And so flush cut the top, flush cut the end, and then measure out 3 1/4 inches. Now each of the measurements that I'm giving you will give you a 2-inch headpin above the fancy portion. So if you need a longer or shorter headpin, you can adjust the length accordingly. Now what I'm going to use here is my first step of my looping pliers, and I'm going to make my first P-loop. Then I'm going to hold that looping plier right up against the loop and make my second loop so that I cross over that first wire. So it looks like a B shape, right? Like two wings, so it's a B. And then I'm going to hold my pliers, again that first step, against these loops, and then this time when I rotate this wire around to make a loop, I'm going to go from underneath. So the first loop is flat, the second loop I went with the wire over the first loop. So now this third loop I will go under the wire, and you'll see why when I flatten it. Okay, so that's got me started onto the club. And I'm going to switch to my flat nose or needle nose pliers, and I'm going to flatten this out. And by doing that, the loops line up right next to each other. And I can center this wire. So I have my loops lined up, and there I have my club shaped or three leaf clover headpin. And you can just use your pliers to make sure the loops are kind of uniform. There we go. I hope you enjoyed making these fancy headpins with me. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next week.